so I'm going to take the ghost tour in Nashville.
So this is the Nashville Ghost Tour. You know that, I reckon, right? So let me tell you a ghost story or two about the hotel. Ghost in room 910. Okay, that's the top floor of the hotel, all right? And this story goes back to 1963. And the story goes like this. Somebody was checking into the hotel, and the bellhop was down at the front desk, took him up to the 9th floor. They got out in the lobby of the 9th floor, and they heard a baby cry. Crying baby in one of the rooms. And just cried and cried and cried. So the bellhop went and knocked on the door. Nobody came to the door. The baby just kept on crying. So the man checking into the hotel said, well, maybe you should, look in, see what's going on. So, of course, the bellhop had a key. He went to the door, stuck the key in and unlocked the door, and there was nobody in there. No baby, no nothing. So the story is the bellhop ran down the 9 flights of stairs, went up to the front desk, took off his cap and keys and threw them on the desk and said, I'm not working in this. Well, he probably was a little more rattled than that. It's not going to work in this haunted place. Okay, people at the front desk thought maybe just been down at Tootsie's, having a drink. But from time to time, up until this day, people will sometimes call down to the front desk to report the sound of a baby crying up there. Now, we don't know who that baby was, but the local papers reported a since-related death in the hotel right about that time. And it's interesting, when the hotel was remodeled, they remodeled the top floor, and room 910, where all this took place, was taken out. It doesn't exist anymore. So they made a big suite. So it went from 9.8 to 9.12. Let's go down a floor or two, and we'll hear about the woman in white. Okay, woman in white is called that because, there you go, she's seen in a white dress all the time. All right, now, this story goes back to 1910 or so, when the hotel was moved. And she and her husband came to Nashville. We don't know for what reason, but the early records of the hotel were lost in a fire, so we don't know who these people were. But when they would have come here, this was a residential area around here. Of course, downtown is still where downtown is. But one morning, the woman in white left the hotel just to go walk around Nashville, take a look around. And she came back a little earlier than expected, went up to her room, went in the room, and she found in the room with her husband a woman not her, if you take my meaning. You don't know what I mean, ask this lady. She'll explain it all to you. And so a fight broke out, as you might imagine that it would. And of course, in 1910, there was no air conditioning, so people on the street could hear the husband and wife yelling at each other. I don't know what happened to the other girl. I hope she snuck away. Anyway, so the next day, the manager of the hotel went up there to see what was left, if they'd broken all the furniture and stuff. And he unlocked the door and went in, and in the room he found the woman in white hanged in there. She was dead, man. Dead as a beaver hat, just hanging there in the room, okay? Now, we know it's always the man's fault, right, sir? Absolutely. Just might as well confess, get it over with, save us all a lot of time and money. So the Nashville police came and they questioned the husband. 1911, that probably meant they tied him up and roughed him up a little bit. And but he would not confess, and there wasn't really enough evidence to declare her death a murder. So it was ruled a suicide. All right, the woman in white is seen anywhere in the hotel. She's almost always on the move, going up and down the stairs or across a room or something. And sometimes we'll get a report like this, like one lady was staying in a room by herself, excuse me, and she kind of woke up in the middle of the night and looked up, and she saw this woman in white standing in her room. And so the woman in white just kind of disappeared into the wall. So the woman who checked in called down to the front desk because she didn't want to be charged with having an extra person in the room. That's expensive, you know. So she called down there, and the people at the desk thought maybe she'd been drinking, so they kind of blew her off, you know. But the woman in white is seen pretty much anywhere in the hotel. Y'all from around here, but have you heard of the Bell Witch? Have you? Okay, great. Now, the Bell family was one of the pioneer families settled in Nashville, and they settled in and still live up in a little community called Adams, which is about 30 miles, I think about 25, 30 miles kind of north of here. And there was this witch that bedeviled them for years and years and years and years, and some people say still does. In fact, she's one of the few witches where there's documentation of her actually trying to kill somebody. And that was Betsy, the daughter of John Bell. Okay, now John Bell was a big businessman, and Andrew Jackson was a big businessman. So Jackson was leaving from his plantation to go spend some time with Bell and talk business. He had a wagon load of stuff, don't know what was in the wagon, and a bunch of guys riding with him, Jackson. And they rode along, pulling the wagon. They got pretty close to the Bell home, and the wagon stopped and would not move. Okay? The roads weren't wet. It wasn't stuck in the mud. The horses couldn't move it. The men tried to push it, pull it. It just wouldn't go anywhere. And Jackson is supposed to kind of, lightheartedly said, "Oh, this must be that witch they're always talking about up here." And then the men reported hearing a voice that said, "You men go on. I'll see you tonight." And then the wagon was free. So they went up to the Bell place. Okay? Now, they were supposed to stay for a week, but they came back the next morning. A lot of the ghost stories about the Capitol kind of laid at their feet, the feet of those two guys. And this story we were told by a couple of rookie police officers who came up here on the hill to look around as part of their job, and they heard this fight going on. So they called down to the police station and said, "We're hearing a riot up here on Capitol Hill." And they said, "Well, okay, pull back, we'll send more guys. We don't want you to walk into a riot." So they sent reinforcements, and they looked all over the Capitol, could find nothing. This happened 2 or 3 times to those same rookies, and eventually they were down at the police station, and this old grizzled veteran cop says, "That's Strickland and Morgan up there. You're never going to find." Now, our Capitol has its usual, the doors close and lock for no reason, the machines start and stop for no reason, rocks get thrown and kind of fall for no reason. But one ghost who haunts the Capitol is probably dates back to the Civil War. Now, you probably know from your history that outside of Virginia, there were more Civil War battles fought here in Tennessee than anywhere else in the whole country. Horrible fighting. Just about anywhere two people could stand and shoot at each other, they did down here. And so, in fact, Nashville was the first Confederate state capital that was captured by the Union Army pretty shortly after the war started. So people would write letters from here, people who lived there write letters, talk about being an occupied city, occupied by the Union Army. So anyway, and so there were battles all around here. Here in Nashville, a horrible battle. Down in Franklin and Stones River, just all over the place around here, horrible stuff. In fact, 200 soldiers, we know, died right up here, defending the Capitol when the Union troops first came in here. So, a ghost story that arose, that we attribute to some of those soldiers, goes like this. A painting party of 4 guys was painting the offices in the Capitol, repainting, and it came to be lunchtime, and so they decided that 3 of them decided that they would go and eat lunch, okay? And the other guy decided, I'm going to just stay here and sleep on the couch. So he kind of laid back, and he said he woke up in the middle of the afternoon, and he kind of looked up, And there was this guy standing at the end of the couch. The guy had on a blue uniform, and he says to the guy sleeping on the couch, he says, "Get your feet off the couch!" That's exactly what he said right there. And so we think maybe that's one of those Union soldiers, you know, still guarding the Capitol, taking care of the furniture. It's the oldest standing church in Nashville, built in 1847. It's one of the oldest Catholic churches in this part of the country. And the Diocese of Nashville has never admitted that it was haunted. But in 1970, there was a renovation of the church. Remember, built 1847. 1970, there was a renovation. They took down a wall, and behind the wall, they found a casket. No name on it, no marking. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'll get back to it in a second. So about the time that happened, people started coming out with ghost stories about the church. And some of them were printed in a big magazine article. And the ghost stories included such as this. One about a cook who worked in the church. Now, when this happened to her, the clergy folk lived in the church. They ate in the church, you know. And so she was their cook. She was working in the kitchen, and she said she saw this guy come in the kitchen, this big, tall guy, about 6'5", wearing a black suit. She went to try to talk to him, find out who he was. He disappeared. Okay? Well, she reported it to the people who ran the church. They thought maybe she had, you know, hit the cookie cherry or something. But it wasn't too long until a guy who was the caretaker of the church was working in the sanctuary, and he reported seeing this big tall guy walk into the sanctuary. When I'm trying to talk to him, the guy just disappeared. Big tall guy, about 6'5", in a black suit. Okay? Other ghost stories that came along at that time. One by a priest who was working in the library in the church, and he says the door opened. He didn't see a ghost. What happened was he heard footsteps. The door opened, he heard footsteps walking across the floor in the library, and they turned around and walked back out of the library. Never saw a ghost. Finally, one of the other big stories involved a bishop who was asleep in his room. There was a knock on the door. He went to the door, opened it up, and looked down. The doors were locked on each end of the hallway, so nobody could get this door. So he went back to bed to try to go to sleep. And in a few minutes, he heard another knock, this one right on the headboard, above his head. He died 3 days later. There is a ghost who haunts Printer's Alley. His name is Skull Schulm. You see Skull's Rainbow Room up there? Okay, that was his restaurant and nightclub. Skull was a dramatic sort of guy, and the Rainbow Room goes back to the late 40s, early 50s. He was here closing up the Rainbow Room, adding up the receipts for the day. A couple of guys named Pence and Cavea came in, went into the Rainbow Room. Police theorized they were trying to rob him, but Skull wouldn't give up the money, so they slit his throat. The guy who was coming to fill up the cigarette machine in the Rainbow Room found Skull on the floor. They got him to the hospital, but he died. He is the ghost who haunts the alley. He's sometimes seen out here in the alley. When he died, the Rainbow Room was closed as a bar, a nightclub. And boxes would fall off the shelves. Stuff like that would happen in the storage room. They'd see apparitions in there, and people would stand over the spot where Skull was dying, basically. The temperature would drop. It's very low there. So he haunts the Rainbow Room still today. Has a long history of being haunted and a strong connection with country music. But the first ghost reported in the building had nothing to do with country music. About early 1900s, Tom Ryman died, and the Union Gospel Tabernacle was renamed the Ryman Auditorium. Okay, and in 1914, a ballet company was in there putting on a show, and during the show, somebody started heckling the dancers. So the ushers went up to try to find who was doing it. They never could find who did it. And the voice would just stop. The man would disappear. Okay, this happened several times. Until one time, a man who knew Tom Ryman in life was there. And the guy started heckling people on stage. And he said, "That's Tom Ryman's voice. He's heckling the people on the stage in his own theater." I don't know what he'd do if he showed up, today here and saw some of the stuff. But country music performers are said to haunt the Ryman. And I guess maybe the most influential one who does is Hank Williams Sr. New Year's Day 1953, he was over in Knoxville. He and a bunch of his friends got in a car. They were going to Cincinnati to cut some records. Somewhere between Knoxville and Cincinnati, they stopped for gas to eat, whatever, and they found Hank dead in the car. They don't know when he died. He was just dead. He's sometimes seen in the alley over there. He's seen out here. He's seen in the building a lot. You guys may or may not remember a guy named Whispering Bill Anderson. He was a country music singer. He's still alive. And he was setting up for a show in the Ryman. They were focusing the lights on the stage, and Whispering Bill says the lights went out over the stage. Okay? And Hank Sr. walked out, started talking to him. Not trying to scare him, I don't think, just encouraging him. He said, "Scare me." He showed up. Most publicized ghost in Nashville haunts the Ryman Auditorium. He's the man in gray, is what he's called. And he'll be seen up in the balcony in the Ryman, sitting by himself, just watching the show. And when people go up and try to find out who he is, he'll disappear. He's seen wearing a gray suit, so people think he's a Confederate soldier. We don't know. The war ended April 1865. The Ryman wasn't built until around 1900, but the Ryman was used for soldiers' reunions, Confederate and Union soldiers. Held reunions here in the Ryman, the way veterans do these days. And so this man in gray could have been one of those soldiers who, came back to Nashville and decided to stay.